We've got a sick show lined up here today. We're going to be talking about religion. Hi, I'm Dill and you're watching Queer Young Thing, and I'm joined by some young people today, and we're going to be talking about some integral things like how do you get the perfect hair? I'm just kidding, you can't get the perfect hair. That's my hair. But we will be talking today with Anthony, Sunny and Kassy about religion and reconciling one's sexuality with religion. Is that possible? Is that probable? I don't know. I think we need to have a chat with some young people who are experts on the matter. Now, Sunny, I do believe that you have some experiences with religion. Now, you've come from you were saying a Buddhist background.
Correct.
And you also accepted God into your life as well. Now, just before we get into that topic, how do you identify? Do you identify as gay, straight, bi?
Gay. I've only been out for like the last 3 years. Again, that's just due to religion and family issues. Yeah.
So, I guess as a Buddhist, how does homosexuality fall into Buddhism?
Well, growing up in a Chinese family, we weren't actually told about the gay community, we don't actually talk about that kind of things. It was something that you learn from school. We don't even speak about sex. You know, in school, if you go to a Chinese school, we don't even learn about puberty. You just learn it as you grow old.
So what happens, I guess, like when those hormones start running through puberty? Because
Wow.
they just happen, man. That's just there. What happens then? What kind of, what's that like?
Well, frustration, obviously. I think then you just start exploring, and then that's when you have unprotected sex with, your friends when you're exploring, and then the next thing you know, they're pregnant, or you've catched something from them as well. A few of my friends done it, so I've kind of sit back and that's why I've just only came out, not long ago, because I just wanted to sit back and just what's going on, and then until the time was right, and I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm gay. So yeah.
Yep. Now, Kassy, where do you fall into our LGBTI rainbow?
I guess I'm lesbian.
Guess you're a lesbian?
Yeah.
I guess lesbian.
Well, I don't know about, I don't really like that word, because, guys get gay and we get an extra special word. Like, why? Why does that happen?
Yeah, true. Well, do you find even, I guess, the idea of having to put a label on the sexuality, do you find there's a bit of pretense in that?
I don't know. I guess I kind of like labels in general. I like to identify myself with them, but it's just, I don't know. It's just the gender thing that I don't understand. Like, why does it have to have a specific...
True. That's very interesting. Do you have a religious persuasion?
I do, but it doesn't help. Yeah, I like labels, but my religion doesn't have a label. I guess the closest I can come is, I would say, agnostic. Me, agnostic's always been, you don't know what you believe in, but you believe in something, whereas I know what I believe in. It's just not something that I've found any set rules to follow, or it's just what feels right to me.
And how do you, I guess, reconcile your sexuality within your religious beliefs? I
think that in my beliefs, anything's okay as long as you're not hurting anyone else, or even sometimes yourself. As long as no one's being harmed by it, I think it should be good to do.
Might sound funny, but actually at a Christian youth group camp, I was sharing a tent with one of my best friends, and we started talking, then it went into a game of truth and dare. His question was actually, would you kiss me? And I said yes. So we were both quite curious at that time.
Now, Anthony, you've come from New Zealand and you've come to Australia from across the border. Far away. Have you found that, I guess, that there is a bit of, compromising with sexuality and religion coming from New Zealand to Australia? Or do you find that Australia is a bit more open?
I think both countries are pretty similar. I think definitely depending on the country and what cultures and what influences you have, definitely with New Zealand having a strong culture and sexuality still finding its place in modern day society in New Zealand with Māori culture. I think that's slowly coming in, and you see different tribes in New Zealand have different opinions or different stances within their community. I think also with Australia, it's a bit like New Zealand. It's made up of so many different ethnic. So you have, European culture, or people, Italian and Greeks, and where they're still finding their way in the community. And then you have obviously Australian. And then, so I think with both countries, you have so many cultures that you have so many different opinions on sexuality. So
now, why do we think that there is, or if you don't think there is, an issue with sexuality and religion? Do you think those two necessarily have to be against each other, or can they work in some kind of balance?
I think they should be able to work in a balance. I mean, I know some some religions where they're just not going to at the moment, but I think that should be able to, accept everyone. And if you want to identify in that religion, you should be able to work a way that everyone can fit in there.
How about you, Sonny?
I agree with Kassy. I think that they should find a balance. I mean, we're not, we're in the 20th century now where things are moving forward, and I think that the older people should just accept who we are now. This is what we are, and we're going to stay like that. It's not going to change.
I like the almost like winking at the camera there, Sonny. That was beautiful. Anthony, what do you think on this matter?
Yeah, definitely. I think people should obviously be accepting of both sides. I think at the end of the day, you're going to have certain people who are very strong in their opinions and don't agree with homosexuality. And then I think, as time goes on, people are a little bit more opening up and coming into things. So I think there's still a long way to go. I think there's steps going towards that way. But I think no matter what happens, as long as there's not too much discrimination or people don't have a hatred, if people aren't coming from a place of hatred, then I think people can live in one society.
Just echoing on that hatred, where do we think the hatred stems from? Because it really does fire some people of a religious persuasion up. It makes them, when you find out that someone is gay or even bring up the topic of homosexuality, it can really get a quite an aggressive response. Does anyone have any ideas where that might come from, or any thoughts on that?
I think what I know of Christianity, someone decided a while ago that they had to do very specific gender roles, and I think that's kind of hard to people to understand that, if it's a same-sex relationship, people aren't going to fit into that gender role.
Wow, some pretty interesting conversations going on right now. Hey, you don't want to go anywhere because we've got more Queer Young Thing coming up right after this. We'll be watching a movie from Marco from -18, so that should be pretty cool. This makes the gnarliest sounds. Hey guys, I'm Dill. If you are watching Queer Young Thing, we're joined tonight with Anthony, Sonny, Kassy, and of course myself. And we're about to watch a movie made by Marco from -18. It's about religion and young queer people. So, hey, it's gonna be pretty cool.
A sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious. A sickness of the mind. A homosexual. A person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex.
Homosexual behavior is harmful not only to society, but more importantly to the individuals who engage in that behavior.
You don't need to be in the pew every Sunday to know that there's something wrong in this country when gays can serve openly in the military.
People who are trapped in the homosexual lifestyle, they're in constant rebellion with order, with their natural order, with natural law.
If there's one characteristic trait of the gay agenda in the public school system, it's this: it's sneaky. It's usually designed to look like something else. It's disguised as something else.
The reason that HIV was invented as the cause of AIDS is it was a way to get research money.
We have to understand barbarians need to be educated. They need to be disciplined. And just because someone feels it or thinks it doesn't mean that we're supposed to go down that road.
I went to a religious school called Wheatland. It's in Elstonwick. It's a Jewish school. And not having other friends in my year or above that I knew were gay themselves meant that I felt very alone. So I think in that respect, the religious community was almost a restriction on coming out, or not coming out earlier, I suppose.
I think that I've always had a lot of problems with religious opinions and the way that religious people look at the world in a lot of different aspects. And I remember when I was doing my coming of age ceremony, and I was a vegetarian at the time, and I had so many arguments with the rabbi.
My parents are they're quite religious, so when I came out, the first thing they said was like, it's not how God made you, and so they're kind of, not very supportive in that sense.
I was born in Greece, and my background is Greek Filipino. I'm baptized Greek Orthodox, but I was raised in primarily a Catholic kind of context and setting. So coming to terms with the fact that I like boys and that I also like girls was not only confusing for myself, but it was just a bit of a shock to the system.
And so I've always had a few problems with the way that religious people see things, and I know that it's quite defined that in the religious community that you can't be gay and it's a sin and it doesn't work. And I once spoke about it with the rabbi's wife, and I said, what's the deal with that? What's up with that? And she just basically said, with men, they're wasting sperm and it needs to be made to procreate and things like that. And I said, okay, well, what about women? She said, it's more frowned upon.
Like, a lot of people around you might say that it's wrong and whatnot, but if you think it's right, then you should just be who you are.
And I've always felt that there was a strong place for me in the Jewish community, regardless of anything, especially sexuality. I go to a Jewish youth movement. I'm heavily involved with that. I'm a leader there. I go to a Jewish school. I have mostly Jewish friends, also non-Jewish friends, but mostly am surrounded by Jewish people constantly. I definitely think I have a strong connection with Judaism and a strong connection with the religion in a different kind of way, and more with the culture than anything.
I think I had it relatively easy compared to most people, and I feel quite fortunate because of that, as I have got quite a religious family. They're Orthodox as well. But I think it's sad to say that I was fortunate, because I think everybody should have to have the same easy right that I did. There were a few months where I think my family had to adjust to it. I don't think I was necessarily aware of the challenges that they were going to go through. I think that my parents went through a phase where they had to almost mourn the loss of the life they thought I was going to have as a straight person. They had to have time to then educate themselves about what being gay is. Because I think at the same time, when someone comes out, they're aware of their sexuality, they've had time to process it, and now they've got to be able to let others around them go through the same period that they go through.
My name is Fred Morgan. I'm the senior rabbi at Temple Beth Israel. Everything here hinges on what you're willing to allow the text to say, or where you're going to say the text no longer speaks loudly to us anymore, or we feel the text just doesn't apply in this instance anymore. And that's always tempered by what's actually happening in the wider society.
My name is Carolyn Francis and I'm a Baptist minister. The trouble, I guess, for me is that I think that at the time of the writing of those scriptures, there was really no sense of sexual orientation the way we understand it today. There was an understanding of sexual practice, but as we have grown in our knowledge through science and other research, I think we've come to understand sexuality differently.
It's definitely getting better. There are a lot more progressive religious faiths out there. There is a lot of the conservatives out there, but the important thing is that there are small pockets of change here and there, not only in Catholicism but in also other religions.
I must say, it's really struck me that though there are huge discussions about gays and lesbians and gender issues in religious circles, when I've just mentioned these things to my children, they're perplexed. They say, what's the problem?
I think that religion's a very personal thing, and it's not for anyone else to define whether you belong there or not. If you feel a connection with it, that's going to remain. I mean, I'm not gay above my religion. I think that my identity is comprised of all these factors on a pretty equal level, and I'm not Liat the gay that happens to be a Jew. I am Liat the gay Jew, or the Jewish gay person, you know, and that's just how I am. And it's important to me to remain that way. And there was a brief moment that I was unsure, and everyone's going to experience that, but don't let go of your identity and don't push aside factors of what make you you just because you've discovered something else.
We will be back a little bit later on with a panel of experts where our young people are going to be asking them the crucial questions instead of just getting force-fed answers and advice. We've got our panel of experts. We have Matt Glover from the MGA Counselling, Michael Barnett from Aleph, Melbourne, and Andrew Wheatland from the Spirit Lounge on Joy 94.9. And just before the break, we watched a video on sexuality and religion. Now, was there anything out of that video that you'd like to echo?
One of the things that really resonated with me from that video is the idea of that you don't actually have to trade in your sexuality to have spirituality, or trade in your faith to have your sexuality, that they're both equal, they're both important, and you can keep both. You can make it work.
Do you think the Bible is still relevant?
Yeah, look, I'll answer that. My background is as a Baptist minister, and so I've done lots of study, research into the scriptures, and of course with my counselling, dealing with people with different sexualities. And this question comes up a lot, and one of the things that we need to realise is that our Bible, or our scriptures, however you want to call it, were written in a certain time, in a certain place, to a certain group of people. And while there are lessons for us to learn about that, from that, about how those people wrestled with faith and tried to live faithful lives, we also need to recognise that our time, our culture and our place is very different. We have different understandings of sexuality, different understandings of sexual practice. And so the burden on us is to take the lessons from back then, but not the literal black and white words off the page.
Some people still really hold on to those views. You yourself have experienced what it's like when people have, push people away for, even sympathising with the LGBTI community. Now, what kind of lessons would a young person take from that if they are questioning their sexual identity, and then they turn around and they find that their church or their family, they don't want anything to do with them anymore?
It's a really pivotal moment, and it can go really badly for some people that have faith as the core of who they are, to then be told that because of their sexuality they can't have that faith.
Which is something so minute, like your sexuality. Yes. It's not an integral part of our day-to-day life.
Well, it's an integral part of who we are, though. It's not something that you can just pick and choose. It's part of who you are. But to be told that because your sexuality is a certain way and you can't have faith, but if faith is something that's really important to you, there's this internal fight that happens that can often lead to really bad mental health situations. In the worst cases, thinking of suicide, and in the most extreme circumstances, people successful taking their life. But the good thing is, as we saw in the video, that there are more and more churches and faith communities now that are recognising that there's very much a place for our LGBTI brothers and sisters in the community of faith. And not only a place, but a contribution to make as well. And so while there are some churches, some faith communities that are still hostile, I would encourage young people, LGBTI young people, to make the hard call and say, well, if this community doesn't support me, who I am in my faith journey, it's time to find another one that does.
Michael, what are your thoughts on Kassy's question? Is the Bible still relevant?
Well, I think it depends on where you're coming from and what sort of religious upbringing you've had, whether it's, from my experience in being brought up Jewish and seeing a Jewish perspective, the Bible what it'll be different things to different people. For some people, it's the entire existence of their life. And if you're from a more orthodox background, everything hinges around the Bible, everything, and its interpretations, and there is no escape from it, no matter what. And if you come from a more progressive background, then perhaps it might be a guidance, but it isn't as pervasive in your life. And so your community, your upbringings, your beliefs will hinge around that concept of what you hold on to as the Bible. So it's not a case of is it still relevant, but how relevant is it in your existence, totally, partially. And then you have to look at your sexuality. What's more important to you is who you are, and then how do you identify with your religion or your faith. I think you need to look at it in the context of your community, and sometimes you can't just say, I don't want to have anything to do with those intolerant beliefs as far as my sexuality, because you're then going to throw away your entire community, and it's not so easy.
Yeah, so with the film, there was one guy who said that he was fortunate enough that his family backed him up growing as a gay man. And my question is that, do you think in times that the elders, which because again, going to the black and white books, they would accept us more so that we don't go through, like you said, suicide? Do you think, in times they will accept us for who we are, or are they going to just shunt us from everything?
Families, it depends on how your family wants to be seen in their community, and they might have one particular viewpoint, but if they go against the wishes of their community and accept your sexuality, then they might be rejected by their peers, and they might, their diverging views might cause conflict. So if you're from a community that, doesn't allow for that expression of sexuality or gender diversity, then they might be more restrained in how they can accept you. And that's a real problem in many religious communities, is how far can you sway away from the expected norm within that religious community. I think that's a big issue that needs to be discussed. And parents obviously want to look after the best interests of their children and allow them to live the healthiest, happiest lives, but at the same time there's that fine balance of what's important to them.
Anthony, do you have anything that you would like to ask any of our panel of elders?
I guess the only thing I would really talk about is, when the Bible, when it comes to sex and the point of having sex, even being gay or how does your views with religion, having sex with someone, maybe someone you love in terms of a relationship and partnership, rather than maybe someone you don't love, or it's just the instant connection and many sexual. So there's still principles from the Bible where obviously love is involved in a relationship, or many just sexual engagements like the gay community, does get involved with, or straight people. It's any sexuality. Like, what do you take out of the Bible?
Look,
between those two incidents.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the thing that I take from the Bible in terms of our sexuality is that it's a gift that we give to somebody else, that we share with somebody else. So rather than try and work out, how far is too far and how far do I push the boundaries and things like that, a better question is, how can I treat my sexuality as a gift? Not just give it to anybody, but wait for that person who we have that really intimate connection with, that we have that deep love for, that we're willing to share our most intimate self with. And that's sexuality in its rightful place. Traditionally we would say you have to wait for marriage, but of course for the LGBTI community, in this point in time, it's just not an option to be married. And so we need to think about and talk about different ways of expressing that. And not so much having boundaries, but recognising that it is such a special, important core part of who we are that we just don't give it away to anybody.
Thank you so much to our panel of elders and to our young people for tonight's episode on religion and queer youth. But we have ultimately come to the ending of another show. My name is Dylan, and we will hit you up next time. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter with the hashtag QYT. Thanks for watching, guys.